If a person is born ignorant to parents that are ignorant, in a society that is ignorant, lives a life of ignorance, then ignorance becomes the norm. Thus, indoctrination can be called education, and all lies can be called truths. Because this person never knew the truth, therefore his mind was never his own. Unfortunately, this is the hidden reality faced by we Africans. We have been stripped of our true identity, our true culture, our true history, our true spiritual system, and have instead been indoctrinated with many white mental enslaving lies. Lies that are designed to make us think in ways that serves and protects the interests of the white society. The African slave of the 21st century are now those who cannot unlearn those white mental enslaving lies that have been indoctrinated into our minds by the white society. One of the saddest things that the white society has done to Black people is that they've so effectively indoctrinated their mental enslaving lies into our minds that many of us tend to reject any evidence that proves that we've been lied to. Many of us are no longer interested in finding out the truth. In fact, many Black people even becomes angry when presented with facts proving that we've been lied to. The white society's lies have totally imprisoned millions of us. First they fooled us, now we fool ourselves. The collective state of we Africans throughout diaspora is very much like the story of Plato's cave. The story of Plato's cave describes a group of people who have lived their entire lives chained to the wall of a cave, being fed mental enslaving lies. One day, one of them broke free from the cave and discovered that all that he'd been taught while in the cave were lies, mental enslaving lies. He therefore returned to the cave to free the minds of those he left behind. But as he tried to free their minds by teaching them truths, they all resisted because their identities were so deeply attached to those mental enslaving lies that they were angry. And the more that he tried to free their minds, the more angrier they became. So much, in fact, that they threatened him with violence and chased him from the cave. This scenario is consistent with the collective state of millions of Black people, especially in regard to the Christian religion. The fact is that the early white Christians' conversion of Africans into their religion had absolutely nothing to do whatsoever with saving the souls of Africans so that Africans may join them in heaven during our afterlife. This is an irrefutable fact because the early white Christians literally believed that Africans had no souls and that heaven was for whites only. In fact, the early white Christians believed that the thought of an African entering heaven was as literally as ridiculous as a dog doing so. This is an absolute fact. When we logically look at the facts as they truly were, we can say with great certainty that the white enslavers' conversion of Africans into Christians had absolutely nothing to do whatsoever with saving the souls of Africans. There was another self-serving reason why they put their time and energy into converting a people into Christians that they otherwise treated so brutally. The self-serving reason was to indoctrinate the belief of a white God into their minds. When the Africans were taught to believe that God is white, this produced a profound adoration towards whiteness within their minds. This profound adoration towards whiteness is then transferred and transposed onto white people. This subconsciously happens without many even realizing it. This made the Africans more subservient towards whites, therefore into more loyal slaves. This also made Africans much more easier to colonize. Furthermore, through Christianity, millions of Black people have been brainwashed to believe that all of the wrongs that the white society has done to us throughout history have been washed away clean by the blood of a fictional Jesus. Furthermore, by teaching Africans that a white God sent down his white son to earth to die for us, This literally makes many black people feel indebted to white society. Christianity has proven itself as being a very successful propaganda tool used for socializing black people. Socialize is when the oppressors indoctrinates false information into the collective minds of the oppressed that manipulates the oppressed to think and behave in ways that are beneficial to the oppressors. White social scientists describe this nefarious practice as instilling a value system into the collective minds of the oppressed that makes them adhere to the authority and existing infrastructure of the dominant culture. Simply put, it's how the white society protects itself from massive unified black retribution. The reason why there's rarely any resolve whenever a black conscious person tries to teach these noted facts about Christianity to a black Christian is because the conscious person presents documented facts, critical thinking, reasoning, and common sense. But black Christians have been taught to stand by blind faith, even when the abundance of evidence are to the contrary. They have been conditioned to abandon their critical thinking skills and to ignore all evidence to the contrary of their religion. This sounds very admirable, but this actually imprisons the mind. To try to teach the truth about Christianity to people that have renounced the use of reason, facts, and common sense is literally can be as difficult as trying to feed medicine to the dead. Many black Christians attempt to defend their religion by insisting that Christianity was originally taught in Ethiopia. Therefore, it's actually originally our religion. It comes from Africa. Many black people believe that the discovery of the old Ethiopian Bibles proves that Christianity was originally the religion of black people. However, in reality, the Roman Emperor Constantine created the false Christian religion in the year 325 AD. Christianity did not become the official religion of Ethiopia until the reign of King Ezana in the year 341 AD. That's 16 years after the Romans created the false religion. So those old Bibles and Christian paintings in Ethiopia proves nothing. The Romans created the false religion. Christianity is not the belief system practiced in Africa before the year 325 AD. When the Romans created the Christian religion and the Jesus Messiah myth, it was an ingenious scam. Its ideology that to enter the kingdom of heaven, you had to go through Jesus, literally meant that the church held the only key to heaven. That's ultimate power on earth. Moreover, the Romans that wrote the Bible in 325 AD were a sexually depraved society that routinely engaged in massive orgies, wife swapping, pedophilia, incest, bestiality, and dead sports. They continued these practices even after writing the Bible. Furthermore, the Roman emperor, the person in charge of writing the Bible, he himself, who was personally responsible for putting Jesus in the Bible, he himself refused to convert into a Christian. Even upon his deathbed, he refused to become a Christian. Now, these noted facts, combined with the additional fact that the Bible strongly condones slavery, totally disqualifies it from being the true words of God. Come on, critically think. If the Bible truly contained the empowering words of God, it would have been kept as far away as possible from our enslaved ancestors instead of brutally imposed upon them as it in fact was. The Bible is in fact the first propaganda literature used to socialize black people, to think and behave in ways that are beneficial to the white society. During the 1960s unprecedented unified black protest, it was decided that the socializing of black people to think in ways beneficial to the white society had to be reinforced daily. It's now being done through unrelenting media propaganda campaigns that keeps us believing the fraudulent worst about ourselves. Keeping us believing the fraudulent worst about ourselves is how the white society now controls us and subjugates us. When people constantly receive fraudulent negative narratives about themselves, this creates self-hatred and disunity, which attacks the core foundation of what bonds a people, and they can then be ruled over forever. The oppressed will always believe the fraudulent worst about themselves. Usually people have a right to believe what they choose to believe. But the oppressed does not have this luxury. The oppressed must gain a clear, concise, and accurate understanding of their plight and condition in order to liberate themselves. Because if our understandings remain flawed, then all remedies that stem from this misunderstanding will also be flawed. This is why those who know must teach. We must function based upon what is true in order to liberate ourselves. We will never liberate ourselves believing in a biblical fairy tale and an urban myth about the slave syndrome. We have to recognize it's a social sciences that are being deployed against us. We must learn them and then develop counter strategies to overcome them. One love and peace.